Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A topic we've done a couple times over the last 6 months, so here we go. What is something that you swear you saw but have no proof of? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. One time after school, my friend and I were hanging out in her room on the computer, and we heard the front door open and a little beep beep alarm go off when a door or window was opened. We both looked at one another, confused, since both of her parents weren't supposed to be home for several hours, and we both got a weird vibe from the sound. So we slowly crept to her door, and she literally grabbed a bat, and we opened the door and peered down and over the banister to the living room below. And I swear to God, there was a man in a business suit with a briefcase just standing in her living room, the front door wide open behind him, and my friend was like, "Who are you? Get out of my house." And he just slowly looked up at us, like he was totally stoned or confused, and was like, "Whoa, oh, sorry," and walked out and shut the door. That was almost 15 years ago, and we both still remember it and talk about it to this day. At least someone else was with me who saw it. When I was 18, I got woken up in the middle of the night with my mom's favorite song playing. Back when song ringtones were a thing, it was the sound I used to hear every day when people were calling her. It was a few months after she passed away. My laptop was dead. I remember falling asleep being annoyed that I was too lazy to walk downstairs to get the charger because I had homework. It was partially open on my vanity, and then I wake up to the sound and the light at like 3 or 4 a.m. The song was playing. I closed the laptop and it would not turn off. I opened it, first looked for the song app or internet site that was playing it and could not find it. So I just had to hold down the power button forever for it to turn off. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. No one believes me. Also, weird thing with my mom's death in the house, she died in the house comfortably, cancer. You don't have to disclose natural deaths when selling. One of the new owners quickly asked my family friend, my old next door neighbor, if someone died in the house previous because things would happen. My friend's response was yes, but she was a wonderful person and I don't think she would do anything negative. And the new owner was like, "She hasn't done anything bad, but I can just tell, and it's random, weird, helping things." I was living in Texas. It was around Thanksgiving. I lived by myself and was lonely and missing my relatives, the deceased ones. I heard an alarm going off. It wasn't my alarm clock. I followed the sound into my storage room and could hear it coming from a pile of boxes. I dug through and found the right box, then tore it open. In a bunch of stuff I had gotten when a favorite uncle died, there was a travel alarm I didn't know I even had. I must have been his. It was going off about 3 years from the day when he died. He had died on a Thanksgiving morning. I had just been thinking of him earlier that day. This is from Bangalore, India. One of the quirks of the city's climate is the occasional isolated spots of heavy rain. There's a running joke of, when you say it's raining in Bangalore, do mention which locality and street too. So one summer in the late 90s, my friend and I were in the outskirts of the city. We saw a small crowd blocking the highway. There was a rainforest slowly passing across the road, and the people were watching that spectacle. One side of the road was dry while the other side had heavy rain. So we stopped the bike, coolly got down and took shelter beforehand, and from that comfortable vantage point, we saw a parked goods van whose one side was rainy while the other side was dry. It took 5 seconds for the van to be rained on fully, and another 10 seconds for us to be completely surrounded by rain. Till date, my memory of this is in a super clear slow motion, while my friend doesn't even recall the incident. When I was 8, I lived in a trailer park in Florida. Oh boy. One whole row of trailers were unoccupied, no power, no water. As any 8-year-old in the early 90s, I played around them because it was fun. If you've been to Florida, you know what fire ants are. If you've lived in Florida, you know how they react to having their hill stepped on. So, 8-year-old me, not paying attention, wearing shorts, stepped calf deep into a fire ant mound. Yeah, you know where this is going. Instantly, my leg was covered in biting, stinging fire ants. A lot of them. Easily 100. Of course it hurts. I start screaming and stomping. That just pisses them off more. No more than what felt like instantly, this man comes running around the trailer with a water hose. He sprays my legs off and tells me to run home to my mom. I do. Never saw the man before or since. I know you're probably saying to yourself, "Oh, there goes John busting on Florida again," but I swear I'm not insane, but I was walking home from high school 9 years ago and I saw something that I absolutely can't understand that freaked me out badly. I was coming to a crosswalk and across the two-lane street, I saw a distinctive looking girl, maybe a little older than me, wearing a white dress, and she had a Cocker Spaniel puppy on a leash that was just sitting on the sidewalk. I looked away while I was watching for traffic and crossed over to her side, and when I looked up, I kind of jumped because the girl in the white dress was now maybe in her late 60s and her dog was a very old graying Cocker Spaniel. I don't have eyesight problems and I seriously am certain of what I saw. I still wouldn't tell anyone I know because there's no way they would believe me. The only explanation I can feel comfortable with is maybe hallucination, but that's never happened to me before or since. I was almost in a movie. I met a producer because he was in my beach town scouting for teenagers that looked scrappy, then saw me on my bike cut up from the skate park. I went through a whole audition process and got the part, but backed out due to scheduling conflicts with school and hockey. I was supposed to be in a sequel to a movie about a kid that moves to a new school and there's an underground fight club. I was shown the trailer on YouTube in 2010 and watched it so many times. The trailer for the first movie is gone, and it's so frustrating, and I have no evidence of the movie whatsoever. Listen, man, I know what I saw, but one day when I was 6 years old, we were out playing as kids do. A girl in my class ran really fast in front of me. I was facing forward, standing still, and she was running from the side. She tripped over maybe 15 feet in front of me and fell really hard. But as soon, and I mean as soon as she fell, she got up like Clark Kent in Smallville. That's literally how it looked when she got up. It was that fast, superhuman speed. She got up and kept laughing and running. I know I am not misremembering because other kids saw that shit as well. I never saw that girl after that day. I wonder where she is these days. This is going to sound childish, so bear with me. When I was about 13, I was severely bullied. Between the fact that my clothes were all secondhand, my mother was too caught up in her effing her way down the alphabet to teach me how to groom or do makeup, and I hadn't yet grown into curves. So I was just a chunky weird girl with frizzy hair. Because of this, I got obsessed with fantasy worlds. Lord of the Rings was my initial escape, and then I began writing. This is when I saw the movie Fairy Tale, and I read up on it as much as I could. I vehemently believed in fairies. I lived in Germany at the time, only a couple of miles from a castle. I made fairy houses in the trees outside and in the blackberry bushes on a trail to the library. One day, my sister and I were walking home for dinner. This gold figure about 3 inches high flew in front of us, hovered for a moment, and flew off, leaving an honest-to-God golden trail of glitter behind it. We looked at each other for a couple of minutes, and she goes, "Did you see that too?" Nobody will ever probably see this or believe it. We did. But I swear it happened. Never saw anything like it since. There was no face or anything. It was just like this glowing, golden, roughly humanoid-shaped golden thing with wings. Several years ago, probably around 8, my dad and I were at a hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. We were watching the Animal Planet on National Geographic Channel. Like I said, it's been years. And an episode came on about praying mantis. The episode was normal until the end. Dramatic music started playing and the camera zoomed over to a much larger praying mantis that was clearly a different breed. The narrator said, "And now the younglings must perform a dance to see if it can please the gods." So the little mantis that the episode had been following did a little dance, and the big one watched for a minute, and then leaned down and ate it. The voiceover said, "The god was not satisfied," and the episode ended. For years, I never thought about that, but I remembered it around 4 or 5 years ago and brought it up to my dad. He got so excited because he had thought he imagined it, but no, he remembered it exactly and finished the quote about appeasing the gods before I finished. We have tried ever since then to find it, but it's nowhere. We found a similar episode about the mantis, but the voiceover never happened. I'm so glad he remembers it too, because otherwise I would have thought I'd gone insane. This made me laugh out loud, and when you talk about nature shows, I default to Attenborough, so I'm trying to read it in his voice and be like, "And now the young one does a dance to appease the gods." The gods were not appeased. I thought that was cute, so I hope you find it. I've seen ghosts, UFOs, UAPs, and all kinds of weird shit. But the most unbelievable thing, at least as far as the reactions I get when I tell the story, is when I was in middle school, My girlfriend's family used to take me to this hole-in-the-wall $5 all-you-can-eat crab shack in Maryland, mid to late 90s. As a fat kid, I was the ringer to make sure we always got our money's worth, lol. One night, when I was about halfway through what I would have eaten, I saw a dude eat an entire crab, shell, claws, and all. Like, this dude was housing a whole-ass crab, snapping into it like a Slim Jim. And it wasn't no soft-shell crab either. I could hear the chomping and cracking from several tables over. I remember that I kept expecting to see blood dribbling out of his face, but it never did. I was so awestruck and horrified that I couldn't even move, couldn't finish my food or anything. No one in our party saw it, because I asked about it on the ride home and everyone thought I was joking. There has not been a single instance in my life since then that I've eaten crab without flashing back to that shit. Water from a stone. I grew up on a remote rural property that had been the site of a small community school or orchard in the very earliest days of the settlement of California. There is a spring box still there, which is essentially a 3-foot by 4-foot water wall well hole, around 12 feet deep with the walls built from stone. At the bottom, there's a small alcove where the natural spring comes out and fills up the spring box, important for later. There's a hand pump on top, and a strong lid we built later on to keep people or animals from falling in and being trapped. The year we built that lid, I was about 10 years old. A deer had fallen in and drowned. It was nasty, and it meant that we had to pull it out, pump all the water out, and bleach it out to kill the germs from the deer. My brother accidentally dropped a cordless drill into the spring box while we were cleaning, pumping, building a lid, and I had to go down and get it. We had pumped the water out as much as we could, but there was still 6 inches of water and rising. My dad had needed to do this whole process a few times over the years, and he had always told me that the water that filled the spring box flowed out of a stone that sat in that little alcove at the very bottom of the shaft. I never really understand what he meant, and he was always a little weird about it when he explained it to me, as though he was talking about something scared or taboo. I always figured it was just a point of exposed natural stone that the spring channeled out of and got collected by the wall. When I got down to the bottom of the pumped and bleached well, water slowly rising around my rubber boots, I grabbed the drill and threw it up to my dad. I started to reach for the ladder, but he told me, almost reluctantly, to stop. He dropped down his headlamp and told me to look for the rock in the alcove. I shone my light into the recess, and there sat a dark rock about 16 inches wide and oblong. It sat in its own deep little cubbyhole at the very bottom, and didn't look to be attached to anything around it. It also didn't look like any stone I'd ever seen. "Pick it up," Dad said. I gave him a look like he was crazy. "This was a big rock. Just pick it up," he said. "You'll see." So I reached in and got a hand around either side and pulled. It came up with surprising ease, much lighter than I'd imagined for a stone that size. As I got it above the surface, I saw that it was pockmarked and porous looking, totally different than any rock I'd seen on the property. More significantly, there was water pouring out of it, a lot of water. As I held it in my arms, water was coming out of it at a shocking pace, a few gallons a minute at least. It seemed to come out of the pores in the stone, and it didn't slow down. I held it for a minute, my curiosity and interest slowly morphing into disbelief and awe. I looked up to see my dad's face, set and serious, looking down at me with what seemed like trepidation. I pressed the stone between my arms and the wall, turning it over and around, searching for something, anything, to explain what I was seeing. Wherever I turned it, water smoothly flowed from the underside. I still find it hard to accurately describe how I felt. I've never been religious, and I have always had a curious, rational, scientific mind. My father was much the same, though he had always told me that there were things in the world that mankind would never understand. My mind raced through all the possibilities until I was left holding the impossibility in my hands, and I was peacefully amazed. I stood there with that stone as long as my arms could hold it. Several minutes elapsed, silent save for the steady flow of water, which never slowed or faltered. The water in the well had risen nearly to my hips, my boots having long since filled, and the alcove was underwater. Finally, my father spoke just as my arms started to shake from exertion. "Put it back where it was, right in the same spot." I did, pushing it back into its alcove, then stood and climbed back out. We pushed the new lid into place, gathered our tools, and started walking back towards the cabin. We walked in silence, save for my little brother trying to talk to Dad about building something for his treehouse with the tools. It wasn't until a couple of days later that I asked him about it. He said it had been like that every time he'd seen it, and he had never shown it to another soul. He hadn't even decided to show it to me until my brother dropped the drill. The few people who I've mentioned it to, even people who know me and to be sane and rational, look at me like I've grown a second head when I explain it. But I know what I saw, and I have never been able to remotely explain it, even to myself.